Good evening, everybody. How are you all doing? Good to see you all. I'm really delighted to be here with you this evening. I'm going to move this chair out of the way because it's bugging me. My name is Liz Warren. I am the director of the Storytelling Institute here at South Mountain Community College, and thank you very much. Thank you. That's actually one of the reasons that I got into storytelling, is that all you have to do is say your name and people started clapping. I just love that. So, any of you who are feeling the need of a little more affirmation in your life, just start storytelling and somebody will say your name and then they'll clap. It's amazing. So thank you all for that so much. We have an annual faculty concert. I wish I had figured out before tonight how many years we've been doing this, but we've been doing this many, many, many years, an annual faculty concert, probably 20 at least. And tonight's theme is I Heart Work, or I Love Work, because in case you haven't figured it out, to be a storyteller is in fact the best job in the world. So of course we love our work, although we know that work is not always joyous and fun. As storytellers, it mostly is fun and engaging and joyful. We have a wonderful slate of tellers for you this evening. Before we get going, I'd just like to find out a little bit about who's in the room. If you're taking a storytelling class right now, would you raise your hand? Oh, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. Yeah, bravo. And if you are, if you're a storytelling faculty member, raise your hand. Then you'll just kind of see who's going to be telling this evening. They're all over the place. If you are a friend or supporter of storytelling, raise your hand. There we go. That's fantastic. Another group of people here tonight I want to acknowledge are several community college educators from around the nation. 7 states have come here this week to learn about the Storytelling Institute and to learn about storytelling. We have been working them very, very hard. We worked them all day, and then we made them come back here tonight to hear the faculty concert. I'd like to ask the members of the Becoming Storytellers Workshop to stand up, and let's congratulate them for their hard work. Bravo. Yeah. If you haven't already done so, if you'd put your phone on mute or vibrate, I would appreciate that. The closest restroom is actually backstage. So we're not going to take a break. You're going to hear 10 stories in rapid succession. So if you do need to use the facilities, if you would get up between storytellers, we'd appreciate that. Go around to the back is where the restrooms are, or you can climb up to the lobby of the PAC if that's easier for you. You've got a couple of options. Let me see. I can't think if there's anything else I need to say. I think we're ready to hear some stories. It is my pleasure to welcome up one of the 3 full-time faculty members here at South Mountain Community College. Please welcome Dr. Travis May.
So how are we doing? All right, that's not too bad. It's good. Well, tonight's theme, I love work. I'm here to tell you, I hate work. I hate it. That's right, Liz Warren. Man, I hate it. I remember one of my first jobs when I was 16. I had many jobs, but one of my first ones was a dishwasher. It was for a place called Spaghetti Vendors. It was a little kind of franchise Italian restaurant. And there, I washed dishes. Scrub, 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 wash, 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 rinse, 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 on and on and on. I cleaned the bathrooms, took out the trash, and I remember, I don't really like this. And I told my dad about it. My dad gave me this cliche advice. If you love or enjoy what you're doing, you never have to work a day in your life. That was not happening for me at that moment. No way. But this job had one perk. We got paid every week. I thought, cool. But at that time, I was only making $4.25 an hour. Not much. And I only worked 30 hours a week. So when my first paycheck came, I was so excited. I thought I was in the money. And then when I got to that day of work, hand me my paycheck, I opened it up. What? What? This is not enough. Plus, I see an erroneous charge on my paycheck that I did not order. What is going on here? Something on there had the initials of FICA. I said, is this an abbreviation for fettuccine alfredo? Who ordered fettuccine alfredo? Because it wasn't me, but they took it out of my paycheck. I was hot. I was mad. I took that paycheck, stormed into the owner's office. And I said, look, this is fettuccine alfredo. I did not order this, all right? Oh, he looked at me and he laughed. He said, oh, that's FICA. What's FICA? Taxes. Oh, right then and there, I knew it. I hate work. One of my other jobs I worked at a Fry's grocery store, a couple miles from here. And there, I was a courtesy clerk. Yeah. My job was asking people, paper or plastic? All day. Repetition. Paper, plastic. Paper, plastic. It got to the point they were just getting paper for me because I hated asking. But the manager came up to me one day. He said, you know what, Travis, you're going to do a job for us that no one really likes to do. So, oh, great. In the back, we have a dairy case. And then under the dairy case where the milk and the eggs are at, there's a gutter. And that gutter, you got to pop it up and clean out all the yolk and all the milk gunk that's been there over the past week. And I thought, same thing. Ugh. So I went to the back where they have the butcher shop. You know those white lab coats? Well, I doubled them up. I just took whoever coat was there, doubled it up. I found some gloves, put it on. There was a beanie hat there, put it on. I was ready to go. I got back into the cooler. Now the milk and the eggs sit on these trays, right? And they're metal trays, and they have wheels on them. So I wheeled one out, the milk. I wheeled the eggs out. Underneath, sure enough, there was a metal grate, grill grate. I had to pop that up. Underneath it was all the gunk and goo. It smelled like poop and everything you can think of all in one. It was just ugh, and throw up. It was gross. PTSD right now for me. It's gross. But I had to clean it up. Luckily, someone had did this job before, so there was a hand shovel close by. So I wasn't the only one. So I had to scoop and dump and then get all the paper towels and just wipe it up. Well, that took me about 45 minutes or so in the cooler. I was cold. I was freezing. It stunk. I now really stunk. And I had to put everything back. So I put the eggs back first. And as I pushed and I pushed, it clicked. And then I said, oh no, and I looked down. I forgot to put the grate back on that little ditch. And as a lady was grabbing the eggs, she opened the door. This thing tilted forward on top of her. I remember seeing this in slow motion. No! And eggs came all up on her, on the floor. People from the grocery store. And I'm standing there. Oh my goodness. We need a cleanup in the dairy section. We need a cleanup in the dairy section. And I thought to myself, I hate work. I hate it. But 24, 25 years, future. When I wake up now, every day, and I look in the mirror, I say, ooh, it's good to be me. Because every day, I get to come and teach storytelling. And I get to tell stories. And the words of my dad, if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that's true for me now. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Well, I'm excited to bring up our next storyteller, Chantel Freed. Chantel is our newest adjunct faculty member. We have been waiting for her to start teaching for us for, I don't know, a decade, I'd say. Something like that, forever. Since before we knew her, we were waiting for her to teach for us. People, she just finished her master's degree in December, and we had her teaching classes about 2 weeks later. Give her a big round of applause. Welcome, Chantel Freed.
Thank you. Welcome, and thank you for coming to see me. Oh, hold on a minute. I just got to get this. Welcome. Thank you for calling Fairy Godmother Agency. Bippity boppity boo. How may I help you? No. Did you read the contract? Did you read the warranty? Not 12:01, not midnight. It has to be 11:59 because the warranty expires. Okay, thank you. You know, sometimes I just hate this job. I've been doing this job for so long. Can I just talk to you? Please, can we talk? Actually, can you just listen? Because no one ever listens to me, ever. They don't ever read the fine print, nothing. In fact, if I had 3 wishes for every time I get asked that dumb question, it's 11:59 p.m., I would be stronger and more mightier than Merlin the sorcerer. For real. Merlin. I haven't thought about Merlin in a long time. Oh, he was the cat's meow. I remember when I was in high school my senior year, I took Magic 101, and the only reason I took it is because my girlfriend and I, we would be like walking down the hallway thinking we're all cool, and we would look into the Magic 101 room, and there was the poster of Merlin. Oh, he was just so. So anyway, I registered for that class, and of course, you know where I sat? Right next to that poster, and we were boyfriend-girlfriend for the longest time. And then one day, it was career day and university day. So all the colleges and all the different career people came in and talked to us. And I was sitting there right next to my boyfriend. And this strong-looking young woman came in, and she goes, "You." "Yes, you." And I looked behind me because I know the girl behind me was, she won't talk. I go, "You talking to me?" "Yes, you." So I kind of stood up and moved away from Merlin just a little bit. I'm listening. How would you like to go to a university that gave you the job that would allow you to travel around the world, to taste the richest foods, to drink the most luscious wines around, and you would never be bored? Oh, sign me up, sign me up. So I graduated from the University of Magic, forgot about Merlin, and then I became, of course, the fairy godmother. My first job, you guys probably might not remember it. I actually had to be an alligator, see, because we become in many forms and shapes. I didn't even know how to swim, so I was trying not to drown as an alligator. Not cool. Not cool at all. But, so I kind of doggy paddled as an alligator, but it was okay. The main point that I had to stay focused on is I was there to help a young woman find her true pathway. And her true pathway led her to a prince that was going to help her become her true self. So that was my first job. I'll never forget that. However, I believe you guys are probably more familiar with the most popular one that I've done. You guys know what that is? The Cinderella, right? The original Cinderella. She was, how can I say? Her appearance, she was very beautiful, exquisite. Her hair was soft like silk. She had milky white skin, and she had a very floral fragrance. However, can we talk just for a moment? Just for a moment. Cinderella kissed the fellas. Now, I'm not going to tell you how many because that's for you to find out. But the most important one that she kissed was that yummy, scrumptious looking prince. And I gave her the 3 wishes, or the wishes to help her become, married, as we all know. You know, I'm glad that you guys allowed me to talk and you listened, because I realized that I might have not been Merlin, but as equally as powerful as Merlin, because Merlin changed the world. I allowed people to change themselves. So, thank you. Thank you for calling Bippity Boppity Boo. Fairy Godmother Agency, how may I help you?
Thank you, Chantel. It's my pleasure to welcome up our next storyteller, Caden Sheffield. Caden has been a colleague of ours for many, many years. She taught English humanities, right, Caden? At Mesa Community College, and when she retired, she came directly to South Mountain Community College and became a storyteller. And I'd like to welcome her up now. Please welcome Caden Sheffield.
That's what I saw, and knew that I was about to be fired from my first job. My first job was, you all remember your first job. I don't mean the part-time ones. I mean the ones that were Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, go see HR and fill out the paperwork kind of jobs. Well, that meant you were an adult. And I just loved the idea that I could move out, maybe rent an apartment and be a real adult, even though it wasn't the job I had trained for. Most of us don't get the jobs we had trained for. Me, now I had trained. I was a college graduate. The ink wasn't even dry on my diploma, with a double major in music and anthropology. Now, how practical can you get? I was about to become a world-famous ethnomusicologist, people. And I sat, and day after day, I looked at the want ads. For you young people, that was pre-internet. You used to find jobs, they were actually in paper. And you'd be surprised, after 2 months, there was not one ad that said, wanted, new college graduate, ethnomusicologist, high pay, benefits, easy work, no experience necessary, start immediately. I mean, is life unfair or what? So I did what people of my generation did when we couldn't find the job of our choice. I went to an employment agency. This was an F2F kind of a thing, nothing online, because we didn't have online. And those of you of my generation might remember that didn't matter what diploma you carried or anything else, you got asked one question and one question only when you walked in the door. Can you type? Well, I thought back to all those late all-nighters I pulled because I had a deadline paper due, and I said, I sure can. And they said, go here. Well, I went there, and it was a big, giant warehouse of a place called Cardion Electronics. It was a defense contractor. And I had to get secret clearance to do this job. So I was really excited. And I got my clearance and everything, and they showed me to my desk, and they said, now you are what's called a repro typist. Now we sat in a pool. There were 5 of us, there were 10 draftsmen, and there were 5 tech writers. That entire department today is done by one person with a laptop and CAD programming. So in case you're looking for the roots of income inequality, I just thought I'd throw that in. But I was happy with it, and I sat down, and I was just really excited, waiting for my first assignment to land on my desk, and I heard snickers behind me, and it was the draftsman. And he said, yeah, he says, you won't be here long. He says, the last one only lasted a few weeks. He said, because you know who you're working with? I said, huh? He said, you're working with Racetrack Sam. Well, I didn't know who Racetrack Sam was, but he points over his shoulder to where all of the people who had actual offices worked, not just cubicles. And these offices were glass fronted down to about here, and then there were gray steel. And there were 5 of them, and each one had a crusty old man in it. And this particular one had the crustiest of the old men, And I could tell that despite the fact that all I could see were the tips of his crossed, very worn shoes and a huge racing form with a curl of smoke coming up from behind it, because you could smoke in offices back then too. We were really primitive. And he said, yeah, he says he's a perfectionist, and he said, you better hope that when you turn in your assignments, he's had a winning week, because otherwise, man, we don't know what he says to them, but they always come out and they leave. And I'm like, oh, well, wouldn't you know, the next morning, I get one of these huge assignments. Now, what I was to do, what repro typing is, in case you're thinking of changing careers, when the government puts out a defense contract, all the defense contractors have to bid on it. And likely as not, it's some piece of equipment that they've designed before. So the engineers go back and retool it. And they have to go to Washington and make a presentation. And back before you had computers, you actually had to type up these big manuals. And so when the government wanted something like an Azimuth XR1 retooled, it would become the Azimuth XR2. Now, today you go, right, find, replace. Well, what we did in those days was they would circle all the XR1s and you would type it 500 times. And then you would go page by page and put them on a light box and cut them out and paste them in. And then they would reproduce that. That's why we were the repro typists. Challenging it was not. The biggest risk of it was that you'd mess up from sheer boredom, right? Which is, of course, what I did immediately, because I just felt like, well, I'm an ethnomusicologist. This is a piece of cake. I can do this. Well, the very next day, after I'd handed it in, and I could tell it had not been a winning week for Racetrack Sam, I saw, and my knees turned to water, and my mouth went dry. And I felt like, for those of you old enough, Mary Tyler Moore going to see Mr. Grant. And I walked in, and he looked at me, and he had that cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and I could feel all the eyes of the department looking at me, waiting for me to get chewed out. And he said, sit down. And I sat. And he sat down. And now we were below eyesight. And he leaned forward to me and he said, now I know for a fact you did not do this work because you're too good to do work this bad. You are smart. You've got a lot on the ball and you're just starting out. And I know you put a lot of effort into this. So I know you didn't do this. But whoever you're covering for, I'm going to tell them what I would tell them so you can tell them for me. Whereupon he stood up so he was visible again and page by page took it and said, no idiot would do this and you got to always check for this and didn't you think to do blah, 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 blah. And I sat there and I realized they all thought he was bawling me out. But what he was actually doing was teaching me the job. And I forgot to cry. I forgot to be scared. I just soaked it all in like, oh my. I was stunned. When he got to the last page, he slammed it down on the desk and he sat back down and he leaned forward and he said, now, if you ever breathe a word out there that I am not every bit the SOB they think I am, I will be yelling at you for real and you will get canned. Now get out. And I picked the stuff up, and I wobbled back to my desk, and the snickering draftsman said, yeah, what'd he say to you? What'd he say to you? And I said, it's too awful. I can't. It's just too awful. Well, I looked back as the door to the office closed, and the last thing I saw of Racetrack Sam was, thank you.
Thank you, Caden. It's my pleasure to welcome up our next storyteller, Kyle Mitchell. Kyle's a program manager in our Vice President of Learning's office. He also teaches the art of storytelling for us. I forgot to mention that Caden will be teaching the art of storytelling for us in the fall. And this semester, she's teaching a story circles class. So if any of you need a 2-Saturday class to just spend 8 hours telling stories, this is the class for you. See Caden later. But in the meantime, welcome up Kyle Mitchell.
All right. Gotta see if my wife made it. Did you make it, Shauna? Not yet. Okay. Just contemplating which story to share. Okay. All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Mitchell. I am a program manager here at South Mountain Community College, and I am also Dene. So, what I do whenever I speak, whenever I share a story, is I always introduce myself. Yate, she Kyle Mitchell, Yenchia, Twitter Cheatney initially, Nakai Basichin, K Ani Dashiche, Nakai Dashinala. Shiche A Jim Mitchell Willia, Shimasana A Eileen Mitchell Willia, Shima A Diana Mitchell Willia. Ado Kitsui Bitua Denasha, Ado Cheshna Dozi Denasha. So, now that formality's out of the way, to get started. So I was kind of thinking about what story to share. I've held a lot of jobs in my day. I first started on the Taco Bell line at the age of 15, which is now a Krispy Kreme off of Alma School and Maine. And then later on, I moved up to the prestigious Motel 6 on Priest and Broadway. And then I found myself knocking on people's doors, trying to sell knives for Cutco. Yes, 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 I've held many jobs. And I think back to my upbringing with my grandparents, with my grandma and Che. And so I grew up on the Navajo reservation, and one lesson I learned early on was the value of a work ethic. My Che taught me that every day of my life, from when I was a little boy up until he left last year. And so the two lessons that he really taught me was to always help those in a time of need, and always show those who don't know how. And so showing those who don't know how took me back to a time when I was in the Army. So I got called back in 2012 to go back to a new army. So before that, I was in the old guard, and I served during wartime, during the Iraq War, during Afghanistan, deployed during those times. But now it was a new army in 2012, a new army that I was not ready for. And I remember going back to Fort Drum. So those of you who can think of being in Flagstaff and all those nice trees, magnify that by 1,000. And imagine never seeing the sun up until it's the middle of the day. Imagine being so cold there, so cold there, to where we actually taught people and trained them in cold weather survival who were getting stationed in Alaska. So it got that cold there. Black ice, snowfall, all of these other things, right? And so when I went back in 2012, my job was to take care of all the people they were going to get rid of. Right? Because it was a new army, we had to thin out the herd. And back when I served, it was everybody, right? You just had to stand up, muster up, and do what was told and kind of push through. So as a staff sergeant in all of 5-6, right, I just looked the way I do. Clean cut, almost like the picture that you saw in 740. Yes, this little facial hair is pioneering for all Native men right now. And so my uniform, right, reads U.S. Army, reads Mitchell, my rank, staff sergeant in the middle, and then I have what we call a stack on the side. So it always shows my Ranger tab, along with the 1st Ranger Battalion that I deployed with. And on the side is my 10th Mountain patch. And then there, right above my name tape, I have my jump wings from jumping out of planes, jumping out of helicopters. And I also have my air assault badge from, as glorious as it may sound, that it's air assault, that's like cool with helicopters. It's a 3-week school, and all you do for those first 2 weeks is learn how to load up a carry load for a helicopter. That last week for 2 days, you finally get to learn how to rappel out of it. And then the one I'm most proud of is the one that sits on the very top. And if you see me without my shirts, you'll see my tattoo of it there. It's my CIB. So the natives in the room, it's not my certificate of Indian blood, unfortunately. It is my combat infantry badge, something that I earned. And so I get back to Fort Drum, right? I walk in the room, and I'm there, and I got my head up high, my chin is parallel to the floor, shoulders out, arms back, thumbs are right by the side where I need to be. And I walk in, right? Walk in with a purpose. Anybody in my way, I'm gonna knife hand you. What are you doing? This and that and the other. So they're like, all right, Sergeant, here's your platoon. So I look at the guys. I'm like, all right, man, got some studs in the crowd. All right, I'm liking what I see. And they're like, yeah, so we're gonna work with these guys, and then we want you to work with them. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, all right. And they said, those are all the guys that we're gonna get rid of. We're gonna chapter out. And all of them had very luscious figures, right? A little bit bigger, a little bubbly. And they told me, they said, you're going to take care of them, all right? And you're pretty much just going to do what needs to be done, give them the option of staying in or getting out. I said, okay, all right. I said, well, what work have you done with them? Have you offered them anything? They're like, nah, they're lazy, they're slow. We're going to kick them out. Basically, just pay attention, be their babysitter for a bit. It's like, okay, all right, and okay. So I walked over to them, got their names. And after being a civilian for a while and transitioning back, I had interpersonal skills. So I knew how to talk to people. So the knife hand wasn't so much a knife, it was like a little finger, like, hey, come here. Almost like the previous story, right? But not so intentional, not so mean. And so what I ended up doing was talking with them. And I said, okay, well, here's the reality, okay? You're going to be out of the Army, this and that's going to happen to you. And then they all were like kind of smug and are like, well, the Army's going to give us a severance package of $7,000. I'm going to be living large. So mind you, these are junior enlisted, right? So they're PFCs, specialists on the lower end. And I said, okay, so well, I want you to do me a favor. They said, roger that, Sergeant. So okay, so here's a Post-it, here's a pin. I said, I want you to write down all of your bills monthly. What's your rent look like? What's your phone bill look like? What's the payment on your Dodge Charger outside? How much clothes do you get? All of these things. And I said, add that up to, give me a total on that. I said, okay, all right, cool. I said, now get 7,000 and divide it into that number. And they said, so what's it come out to? And they're like, I don't know, like 2.5. And I said, okay, so 7,000 is only going to last you 2.5 months. So that's the reality of it. I said, how much longer you got left in your contract? Some of them are like 2 years, a year and a half. And I said, okay, so how much do you get paid now and how much does the Army take care of? They said 100%. So, okay, so the way I see it is you're weighed with two options. You could either step up and do what is asked of you, or you can take the easy way out and just, be about your business. So they said, well, what do you mean? Like, we're not making weight, we're not making tape, anything like that. And I said, well, remedial PT. I said, do PT in the morning, do PT in the afternoon. None of you guys have really good marksmanship unless the enemy is like dead in front of you. You can't aim worth anything. I said, well, I'll work with you on everything. I'll help you. I said, I'll stand side by side with you through the whole thing, beginning to end. They said, okay. So we started that first week, and we went on a run. And we started out together, and it was amazing, right? It was awesome. The sun was barely creeping over the trees, and we're making our way. And I'm just like, oh, this is beautiful. This is amazing. And all I hear is, Sergeant. I'm like, oh, yeah, you guys are keeping pace. All right, let's slow it down. So I did that with them, and every evening, worked out with them, so on and so forth. And so I had a group of about 10 of them, and I spent about a good 2 months with them. And through that 2 months, those 10, I had 8 of them that not only passed weight and tape, but they also got promoted, and I was able to help them out. And now, out of those 8, there's 3 that are still in. One is a drill sergeant, one is actually an RI, which is a ranger instructor, and then the other one I think is a recruiter somewhere in Tennessee. So if you go to Tennessee, there's a bunch of BS going on in the air if you talk to an Army guy there. Just say that. But yeah, so that was one of the things I had with my grandfather teaching me, help those who need help. So those boys, those young soldiers, those fathers, those sons, those brothers didn't have guidance. They were written off. And I knew my place, and I knew my job as an NCO was to give them everything I had and show them what could be possible. And I'm glad they were able to step up to that. And so fast forward years later, and here I am at South Mountain Community College. I'm here working and doing what I do. And I've held a few positions here. My first position was as a Hoopa Learning Coordinator, which is our American Indian program. I was able to revitalize that. And that's what really fueled me to work in higher ed. I knew nothing about higher ed other than being a student at that time. So I remember joining the program and having to do outreach and recruitment, going to the high schools. I remember going to the high schools and meeting with the native students, and they're all shy, stereotypical, and they don't really want to talk. And then here I come being loud, right? Extroverted, and they're just like, oh my gosh. But then I talked to them about education, and about really how that's the way we rise as a people. That's how we empower each other. That's how we ensure resilience moving forward. And so I was able to get them recruited, right? Tell them my story, tell them where I came from, tell them, hey, at the end of the day, I'm just a res boy in the city. That's it. And so through that, the program grew, other opportunities came. So instead of working just with native students at the end, I started working with our general population. And then now I work with the communities from all the way from Levine, where we have an offsite there, into the town of Guadalupe. Because at the end of the day, everybody needs opportunity and everybody needs help. And I'm so grateful to be part of the Storytelling Institute, where I can share that message and also welcome people in that might be scared to death that you're going to be talking in front of a group like this one day. You don't know what to say. But at the end of the day, we all have a voice. And we all have a purpose. And I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. My biggest takeaway from your story is that I can now refer to myself as bubbly. I like that. Well, the Storytelling Institute is 25 years old. We started in 1995. And for a long time, there were a couple of full-time storytelling teachers and a couple of adjuncts for years, just 4 or 5 of us teaching. And then about 10 years ago, when the college hired this lady right here, Marilyn Torres, who's going to tell us the story later. I'm not introducing her. I'll introduce her later. Things started to change, and the program started to grow. And we've had so much growth in the last few years that we now have a pool of 13, 14 people that teach for us. The 3 full-time faculty and 10 or 11 adjuncts that come in and out. And I'm really pleased to introduce our next storyteller, Vanessa Thomas Wilson. This is also her first semester teaching with us, a sign of the growth of the program and also of the wonderful people that we have teaching for us. Please welcome up Vanessa Thomas Wilson.
Hello, 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 and I'm happy to see some of my students here. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. Support. So, all of us are on our own hero's journey. So we might be at the beginning of our education, or we might be at the end of a career, or anywhere on our life's path in between. But we're running gauntlets all the time. And the fact that we've survived means that we've survived those gauntlets. So I've been a pharmacist over a span of 30 years. Needless to say, there are lots of stories I could tell. But tonight, I'm going to tell you the story that takes you all the way back to the beginning of my career as a pharmacist. So, to start this story, I'm going to need your help with my opening. Now, I'm seeing some people in the audience that I know are going to be able to help me, so don't be shy, because there's lots of other people here who will have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay? Everybody ready? Okay, you're going to sing with me. Okay? You got what I need, but you say he's just a friend, and you say he's just a friend. Oh, baby, you got what I need, but you say he's just a friend, but you say he's just a friend. So, in 1989, that was a hip-hop hit by Biz Markie. And whenever I hear that song, although not so often anymore these days, it takes me back to the beginning of my career. And the reason is I had the pleasure of working with one of Biz's girlfriends. So for the purpose of the story, we'll call her Stacy. Now, Stacy, she was light-skinned. She had a blonde pixie haircut that was slicked down with dippity-doo hair gel and finished in little swirls. She had large gold bamboo initial earrings that hung down to her shoulders and nails out to there. And Stacy kept a clothing diary because she never wanted to wear the same outfit twice, and she didn't. Now, in all the years I've been a pharmacist, I have to say Stacy is the best pharmacy technician I have ever worked with. And I still don't know how she did it with those nails. Now, she and Biz were an item for a while, and he would, fly her out and limo her in wherever he was touring. But the rest of the time, she was ours. So in 1990, September, I moved from New York City with my brand new pharmacy degree, my husband, and our 2-year-old daughter to start a job that I had qualified for and accepted back in April. It was a job with a retail pharmacy drugstore called People's Drugs in Washington, D.C. But by the time we got to D.C. in September, CVS had bought out People's. And my job and the entire management department of People's was gone. So after making some frantic phone calls to make sure that I didn't have a job somewhere I didn't know about, I started calling everybody I knew in Washington, D.C. that I thought would have the slightest inkling of where I could find a pharmacy job. And after a couple of weeks, I landed an interview at the largest hospital in Washington, D.C., a 950-bed hospital in Northwest D.C. And I went in for my interview with the assistant director, Dr. Breckenridge. Now, I should have known there was something unusual about this job, because during our interview, she was way more interested and excited in my first degree, which was in psychology, than she was in my pharmacy degree. But at any rate, I got what I needed. I landed a job, and I was going to start working in the 3 East Pharmacy. So I reported to work, and I was eager and excited and nervous. And as soon as I got there, they sent me to the ICU pharmacy. So there I did my orientation, and I learned all the things that you don't learn in school, like how to process an inpatient prescription and how to make IVs and calculate doses. And when I kind of got my legs under me and I was more at ease, the manager transferred me over to 3 East. I didn't find out for months later that the reason I was orienting in ICU and not 3 East is because all the 3 East pharmacists had flat out refused to train a new pharmacist. They just wouldn't do it. So by the time I got there, they were kind of primed. And for the first couple of weeks of working in 3 East, I went home every day and I cried. I had never worked with a meaner bunch of girls in my life. They were vicious. I mean, they would give me the worst assignments, and then they'd all sit around and watch me do it and criticize everything I did. They would complain about me to staff all over the hospital. They would set me up and basically pie in the face whenever our supervisor came around. Oh, Vanessa did that. Well, why did you do it that way? So it was tough. And after about maybe a couple of months, things started to settle down. I was learning the job and I felt a little more confident, and they invited me out for happy hour, and I thought, hey, wow, a breakthrough. They're starting to like me. They're starting to get to know me. Yeah, I was wrong. So we went out, we went to the bar, and we just had a happy hour like people do after work, and I was on the later shift the next day. So by the time I got to work, they had spread rumors about me all over the hospital. Oh, I had been drinking like crazy. I had been dancing with all the men in the bar, and people believed it because they didn't know me. And these women were smiling in my face. I had one ally there, and his name was Jeff. Now, Jeff was a 6'2" brother from Jersey. He was an R&B crooner. He was about 220 pounds. And he really considered himself a player. I mean, he would spend all his time telling everyone who would listen about all his romantic conquests. But to me, he was a lifesaver while I was drowning at sea, because Jeff could see through those 3 East women, and he knew that they were angry and jealous and petty. And he gave me that insight to see what they were all about, that it really didn't have anything to do with me. They were actually jealous that I was happily married, that I had a child, and that I wasn't walking around angry all the time. And those were the very things that made me a target for their meanness. Well, now I had knowledge. Knowledge is a powerful thing because I stopped looking at myself and started looking at them. So he was sort of my secret weapon. He was my sword and my shield. And so with that, I could do anything. I just needed to learn my job. And so I carried on about my business. Well, one day, Dr. Breckenridge, the woman who had hired me, called me down to her office. There had been a pharmacy technician that had come to work for us only for 2 weeks, and then she quit. And she cited a hostile work environment in our pharmacy as the reason that she quit. So Dr. Breckenridge called me down and she said, she quit. What's going on in the pharmacy? So I gave her a brief but sad synopsis of everything that was going on. And she leaned back in her chair and looked at me and she said, I hired you because you had a psych degree. And I thought you were going to straighten out that dysfunctional group. So I told her, well, it would have been really helpful if you'd have told me that in the beginning because I thought you hired me to be a pharmacist, not a therapist. Anyway, so my last and fourth year there, I was pregnant with our second child. And the minute I started showing, the criticism, the snide comments started up. I got a little pimple and they said, oh, do you suffer with that gestational acne? I got a little bit of a pooch and they said, oh, do all the women in your family carry that big? But it didn't bother me. I just smiled and kept on going, which really ticked them off. So when I realized that I was leaving that hospital for the last time, I had a smile so big, so wide, and so long on my face, you would have thought I was the Joker. In fall of '94, we packed up and we moved here to Arizona. And I started in a new hospital, a hospital that there was no one judging, there was no one harassing me. And I felt like I was a valuable member of the team. Now, I had grown a lot, of course. I had learned a lot. But what I really realized is that if I hadn't been through all those trials, if I hadn't cried all those tears, I would not be the person I am today. And for me, it was worth every drop. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for getting us singing, too. Well, I'd like to introduce our next storyteller, Doug Bland. Doug has had as much to do with the Storytelling Institute as anybody else you'll see on this stage tonight. He's been with us since the very beginning. Please welcome Doug Bland.
So it's been called the great work. And it's not working at 3 East as a pharmacist. And it's not working in the dairy department, cleaning out the trough. The great work is the work of restoring a broken relationship that exists between human beings and the rest of the natural world. It seems like every time I turn on the TV in the last year, the world is on fire. Fires in Brazil and fires in the Congo Basin and fires in California and lately the fires in Australia. 33 people have died, last count. 3,000 structures have been burned. 1 billion animals. It's hard to even imagine. Koalas and kangaroos and wombats. 1 billion animals burned in these fires. Well, it made me think of a Jataka story. A Jataka story is a story about the early incarnations. Before the Buddha was the Buddha became incarnate as an animal, sometimes as a human, other times. This time, the Buddha was incarnate as a little gray parrot that lived in a green wood. She loved it there. She loved to shelter in the arms, the branches of the trees that were her friends. She loved to fly out over the forest and the river that was nearby. One morning she woke up and the air was filled with smoke. And she flew up through the smoke into the air where she could look down and she could see her beloved forest. The trees were wreathed in flames. And she flew because she could fly when the other animals couldn't, but she flew towards the river, and as she flew, she saw the animals down below, struggling, trapped, some of them, to get away. Run, she said, run to the river. She flew to the river, and she decided something has to be done. If not me, then who? If not now, when, then when? So she flew to the river not to escape, but she immersed her body in the river, wings and body, and then she flew up in the air, back to the fire, back to the flames, back to the smoke and the heat. And then she was right over the heart of the flame when she wiggled her wings and her body a little bit, and drops of emerald water fell from her wings and her body down into the fire. And they disappeared. And she flew back to the river and immersed her body again and flew back into the flames. She flew over the animals that were huddled near the stream, and she called to them, come, help with a claw and paw, with beak and mouth and cupped leaf. Come and help me fight the fire. But they said, no, it's too late. There's nothing we can do. And besides, it's safe here. So she continued her trips back and forth between the river and the fire, and the river and the fire. Meanwhile, there were some gods and goddesses that were up in their cloud palace, eating, drinking, talking, laughing. And one of the gods looked down and said, look. So they all looked over the edge of the clouds, the edge of the palace. They stopped eating for a moment. They looked down and they said, foolish, foolish parrot. What is that parrot doing? It's absurd. And then they went back to their drinking and their eating and their talking and their laughing. But the one god was moved and turned himself into a golden eagle and flew down to try to save the parrot. Parrot, turn around, save yourself, go back. It's all futile. But the parrot said, I don't need your frickin' advice. What I need is your help. And then she flew into the fire again. And the golden eagle flew up in the sky and looked down and saw the suffering of the animals and the bravery of the parrot. And the golden eagle began to weep great tears, rivers of tears down cheek and beak. And wherever the water fell of those tears, it put out the fire. And wherever the tears landed, the burned animals were healed. The animals huddled near the river saw the miraculous rain, and they joined in together with cupped leaf and with beak and with mouth, and they tried to put out the fire too, and the tears fell on the little gray parrot, and the wings and the feathers of that parrot were transformed. They took all the colors of the earth. There was the blue of the river, and the yellow of the sunshine, and the green of the forest. And that parrot to this day has been transformed by that. It happened. It happened one day when the Buddha became a little gray parrot in a green wood. It happens every time we fall in love with the colors of the earth and work to preserve them. The blue of the river, the yellow of the sunshine, the green of the forest and the desert. The great work.
Thank you, Doug. Beautiful story. All right, I'm going to ask you all to stand up for a minute. Just stand up, move your shoulders around a little bit. Turn to the person next to them. Next to them. Turn to the person next to you and tell them your first job. Quick, go. Okay, thank you. Sit back down. Somebody tell me one of those first jobs. Somebody in the back, tell me one of those first jobs. Somebody, anybody. Stand up, who was that? What? How did that go? Well, that's a good one. All right, somebody else, tell me a first job. Ricardo, what was your first job? Lifeguard. Excellent. Yes, sir. Stand up, I can't hear you. What'd you do? How did that go? Tell us about it. Oh, cool. Thank you. All right, somebody from this side, tell us your first job. Anybody over here? Anybody? Yes, stand up. That sounds exciting. Wow. Oh, you got to drive them too? Sule, what was your first job? Stand up. Dancing and drumming, African folk song. Very good. All right, somebody over here. What was your first job? Cynthia, what was your first job? How'd that go? All right, thank you all so much for taking a minute to talk to each other and share with us some of your stories. Now, in the Storytelling Institute, one of the things that we've done over the years is figured out how to help train our storytellers. And so most of the adjunct faculty that you hear today, with the exception of Doug, who actually taught the rest of us how to be storytellers, but have learned to be storytelling faculty by sitting through a semester or two with other faculty and observing what they do and eventually starting to do it themselves. And it's my pleasure to bring up our next storyteller, Mario Avent, who has been working with Travis May for the last couple semesters, and we hope that Mario will be teaching with us next year. Please welcome Mario Avent.
How y'all doing? Oh, okay. So, do y'all know can you tell me where elves came from? I know y'all gonna get it wrong, but trees? Keebler? Okay. No? Anybody? Where elves came from? Yeah, there we go. And it's wrong. That's the answer I was looking for. But huh? Who say Ireland? No, it's not there either. I appreciate it though. Well, I'm gonna tell you how the elves got to the North Pole. So, elves, they really, really like to work. Elves, in fact, love to work. And so, elves, they came from Germany, Deutschland, and they were just traveling around, and there's this small little city, the oldest city in Germany, called Trier. And there's this shoemaker, and he made shoes for everybody. Oh, but the population kept getting bigger, and he couldn't make all those shoes by himself. And then he just gave up. So he went to sleep one night. And then all of a sudden that night he heard what was that? And then he heard what was that? And he snuck into his workroom, and he seen these little elves, and they were making his shoes. Oh, yes, he's gonna get paid. And then he turned on the light, and then those elves, they scattered like roaches. They did not want to be seen. How he's gonna get these elves to work for him? Okay. And so the next day, he worked a little bit in the daytime, and then he turned off the lights, and then he heard tick, 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 and the elves were back at it. Oh, but this time he had an idea. And so he snuck to the front of the door, and before he could turn on the light, he shut that door. And then he turned on the light. And those elves, they scattered like roaches, but they had nowhere to go. And he said, please, just let us go. Just let us go. He said, I will let you go if you work for me and you continue to make my shoes. For free? Oh, no, your price will be freedom. Okay. The shoemaker did not know that the elves like to work day and night, all the time. They do not stop. And if you ask them to work, that's exactly what they are going to do. And so, the shoemaker, he went to bed, and those elves started making all the shoes day and night, months, and then the years, and the shoemaker just couldn't get any sleep. Oh my God, they were working day and night from sun up to midnight. Oh man, he didn't know what to do. And all the time, oh my God. And then he went into the room, and then he turned on the light, and you know what those elves did? Nothing. They just kept working. Oh my God. And then he opened the door. Leave. You're gone. And the elves look. No, we still got time. We still got to work. No. No, you could go. But where are we going to go? We just want to work. We just want to work. Say, I don't care. I don't care where you go. Just let me sleep, man. Just please, look at all these shoes you made. I got shoes for a lifetime. Just go. And the elves, they left. In the snow, cold, through Germany. And so they decided to travel up north. They tried working in trees, but you could only use so much wood before you just stripped that tree bare. They tried, working in, where was it? Ireland? Fairies had that locked down. So they had no place to go. So they're traveling, and then they're sitting there on this rock, not knowing what to do, and they see this big man come by. He's wearing red, and he's kind of bubbly. Has this great beard and he's looking at him and say, hey, what's wrong? Well, we're just elves. And we just want to work. Oh, 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 oh. Well, I have a job for you. See, I work up north, way up north, and I need somebody to make toys for me. Elves won't fall for this. Well, how long? All year long. How are you with noises? I don't even care. And so this man brought these elves all the way to the North Pole, and that's where they are now, working every day. And if you listen really, really carefully, I hope you are not trying to go to sleep. You might hear the do, 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 in the North Pole, where the elves are up there working for Santa. Thank you.
See what you started with the bubbly thing? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's good. It's my pleasure to welcome up our next storyteller, Chrissy Dart. Chrissy came up through our program as well. She loves folk tales, and that's what she's going to tell us today. Please welcome Chrissy Dart.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a folktale fanatic, I think. And that's because of the Storytelling Institute, really, and to help me reclaim some of my past through the folktale. So in monasticism, that's where there's monks and nuns of all persuasions, Christian, Orthodox Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, nuns and monks, they often say, to pray is to work, and to work is to pray. And it's also said that honest labor does the soul good. A story from the Upper Palatinate of Germany. There once was a carpenter named Heudel. He was a fine carpenter. He could build tables and chairs and cabinets, and he could even turn wood and make bowls. And if something in your house broke, you could bring it to him and he could repair that woodwork for you. Fine carpenter. He worked hard with his hands. And one day, he was out after work. Maybe he was drinking. Maybe he was with some people. I don't know. But I don't know what they were doing. They lost themselves a little bit, and they stole something. And he had something, and he said, this was pretty easy to get. This was easy. And he thought about that. And time went on. He went out with these people some more, and he stole some more, and he realized how easy it was to steal. And his other work kind of went to the wayside because he started to steal more. And then one time he was out and they robbed somebody, and somebody got hurt a little bit. But it was okay because it was easy, and he got a lot more money that way. And the other job went to this wayside, and he started to steal more, rob more. One time they went out to rob somebody, and they hit him too hard, and he died. That was a little hard at first, but it wasn't that hard. And he did it again and again. And it got easier and easier. And he made himself a really nice walking staff, and he walked the countryside, and every time he killed somebody, he put a notch in it, starting at the bottom, and a notch, and a notch, and a notch. As time went by, the notches went from the bottom of the walking stick to the top. There was only room for 3 more notches. Those murders were starting to weigh on him, and he thought, I'm going to go give my confession to the priest. I've got to get absolution. So he went and found a priest. He kneeled down and he started confessing every murder, starting at the bottom and working up to the top. About halfway up, that priest got a little bit nervous, and he snuck out of the confessional. Now, Heudel was used to killing people, and he knew that man snuck out. He followed him, and he killed him. And he put another notch in the walking stick. And he kept walking. And he thought, I've got to get absolution for these murders. And he came to a hermit. And a hermit now is somebody who likes to live alone. They love to live alone and just be with the Creator and with the Creator's creation. And this hermit happened to be a priest. It was a good day for Hoytel. And this hermit agreed to hear Hoytel's confession. So they knelt down out there in nature, and Hoytel started to confess. He started at the bottom of his staff and went through every single murder. And when he got up to the priest, that was the last murder he did, he stopped. And the hermit priest, Hoytel said to the hermit priest, "So, will you grant me absolution?" And the hermit priest says to Hoytel, he says, "I'll tell you what. If you plant this stick, your walking stick, and it grows, it takes root and it grows, you will have gained absolution." That sounded okay to Hoytel. He was okay with that. So the hermit priest went on his way, and Hoytel, he put that stick into the ground, and he planted it and patted the dirt around, and he knelt down and he prayed. And he prayed and he prayed and he prayed. Several years went by, and that hermit priest came back through that part of the wood. And there he saw in the distance, he saw a beautiful apple tree in full glory with the birds in it, and the branches were out, and red apples. And then he looked and he saw embedded in the trunk of the tree was that walking stick. And then he saw Hoytel kneeling at the base of the tree. "Hoytel, Hoytel, hey Hoytel." But Hoytel didn't turn around. And the priest came up to him ever so gently. And he touched Hoytel on the shoulder. Hoytel turned to dust. And out of the dust flew a white dove up to the heavens.
Oh, thank you, Chrissy. Beautiful story. Well, I'm pleased. I was Chrissy's story in my head. I'm pleased to call up our next storyteller, Kathy Eastman. Kathy has also been with us since the beginning. She spent a career as a museum educator, and now she teaches for us a class called Using Storytelling in Interpretive Settings. And interpretive settings includes museums. So please welcome Kathy Eastman.
Wow, what a great audience to stay with us so long for so many stories. Now, Chrissy, I know for a folktale fanatic, I have to tell you this. This is motif 335. It's often set in South Africa, and it's about hare tricking tortoise. But I've changed things up a bit for tonight and for us. Because you see, one night, Jackrabbit was out hopping along, and he was looking for something for dinner. And he came to a field, and that field had not been tilled for the season. Well, that would be the perfect place to plant some nutritious, delicious sweet potatoes. But it would be really, really a lot of work. And so Jackrabbit continued on thinking about deliciousness or work. And as he ambled along, he happened to meet Tortoise. Oh, Tortoise! Guess what? I happened to find this great big field that has not been tilled for the season. We could plant some sweet potatoes. We could. Oh, yes. We can work together. We can do all this planting. It'll be marvelous to eat those sweet potatoes. Well, I will agree to this if at the end of the season I get to choose the pile of sweet potatoes that belong to me. Oh, yes, of course. We'll do everything equally and share equally. And so with that, they went to the field. And much to Tortoise's surprise, Jack Rabbit was an amazing work partner. He dug and planted and added the slips, and when those tender little green leaves came up, both Tortoise and Jackrabbit enjoyed a few tender leaves, but they did not eat the plants down. And when it came to late October here in the desert, it was time to dig up those delicious, nutritious sweet potatoes. And they dug them up, and they made 2 great big piles. And Jackrabbit said, "Choose your pile." Oh, Tortoise thought this was going great. And so she got out her bag, and so did Jackrabbit, and she said, "I'll take that pile." And she started scooping all of the potatoes in that bag. And just as they were finishing, Jackrabbit stood up and looked around, and he goes, "Javelina, there's a javelina coming. Why, hide your sweet potatoes quick and run and hide yourself, because they might eat our potatoes and they might damage us." And with that, Jackrabbit took off this way with his sweet potatoes, and Tortoise took her big bag of sweet potatoes and dropped down into a nearby ravine. Now, you all might not know this about tortoises, but I've had tortoises, and they can be remarkably speedy and also very tricky. And so when I say that Tortoise took those sweet potatoes and hid them, I mean she really hid her potatoes. And it wasn't long before she was up looking over the ravine, where she could see Jackrabbit kind of just nonchalantly trying to get his potatoes out of sight and wander around like he was looking for something. And as soon as Jackrabbit was out of sight, Tortoise snuck over, grabbed Jackrabbit's bag of sweet potatoes, drug them into the ravine just down over the edge, and crawled right into that bag of sweet potatoes, where she started to eat those delicious, nutritious sweet potatoes. And it wasn't very long before Jackrabbit came back and was looking down that ravine and said, "Oh, Tortoise, she must have been really scared of those javelinas. Why, she hardly hid her sweet potatoes at all. I better take these home and look after them for her." So Jackrabbit picked up that bag of sweet potatoes. It was really heavy, but he got him on his back, and he started to stagger towards home, dreaming of the sweet potatoes he was going to eat when he got there. Well, you can imagine his surprise when he plopped down the bag and opened it up. There was not one sweet potato in there. There was just one great big happy tortoise. "Where are my sweet potatoes?" "I ate them all. They were delicious." "You ate them?" Yeah, I ate them. "I am going to race you back, and I am going to eat up all of your sweet potatoes." Well, all of you in here already know the story of Jackrabbit and Tortoise and how that turns out. And so I'm just going to tell you for the ending that Tortoise, she enjoyed that second bag of sweet potatoes even more than the first. And that's the end.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, before I bring up our last storyteller, who is my colleague Marilyn Torres, I just want to take a minute and congratulate all of the faculty that have told so far. I like to say that we have the hardest working storytelling faculty in the whole world, and I know it's true because it's also the only storytelling faculty in the whole world. Give them a big round of applause. Well, as I mentioned earlier, when Marilyn came to the faculty 10 years ago, that's when the Storytelling Institute really began to change. Please welcome up the heart and soul of the Storytelling Institute, Marilyn Torres.
Oh, Miley's, that's incredibly generous. I am, of course, Marilyn Torres, but I'm also Iyanifa Omifunke, Chief Olumetu Agbomolavimota, Chief Iyasele Egungunovimota. And I am really honored to be here today. In particular, when we talk about work, we look at work in many different ways. And I thought a great deal about what story I would like to share with you. So I'm going to share with you a story that is connected to our traditional stories. A story that speaks about work and is in the spirit of the need for us to take care of the work of our land. Long ago among the Yoruba people, my ancestors, we said that the divinities came down to the earth and they took on human form. We had many divinities that came. Divinities that created the earth itself, divinities that created, of course, humans. We had divinities that worked on many, many different levels. But the story that I want to share with you is the story of a very important divinity who stood up in Ogbashe, as we say, the heavenly realms, and who sat with Olodumare's source and watched how humans and the earth were evolving. Orisha oko ogun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Orisha oko ogun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Aeyo, aeyo. Orisha oko ogun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Orisha oko ogun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Aeyo, aeyo. Orisha Oko was sitting in the heavenly realms with Olodumare's source and looked down and began to see that the humans were struggling. They were struggling with how to care for the land. They were evolving, but they did not understand how to cultivate the earth. The earth in a way that would bring sustenance to the people so that things could continue to evolve. And there was a beautiful goddess who took on human form, and her name was Yemoja. Now, most people know her as the goddess of the sea, but that's a whole nother story about why she became the goddess of the sea. But in this time, she was a river, just like the river of Oshun, the goddess of love and beauty. But Yemoja, she was the river that would ensure that things could begin to grow. Orisha oko ogun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Orisha oko ogun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Aheyo. Olodumare said to Orisha Oko up in the heavenly realms, I believe, Orisha Oko, that if you come down and take human form and visit the river of Yemoja, you may be able to help the people understand how to cultivate the land. Orisha Oko thought for a while, watched all of what it was seeing. And Orisha Oko saw Yemoja, the beautiful goddess of the river, as she danced in the waters. And he thought, aye, she would be one that I would love to become one with. And so it was. Orisha Oko began to dance in the novas and dance and dance and dance, and began to step upon the Milky Way where all the divinities came down to take on human form. And Orisha Oko, when Orisha Oko landed upon the earth, Orisha Oko began to dance in the mud of the waters of Yemaya and began to emerge as a beautiful, handsome man. Orisha Oko gun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Orisha Oko gun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Aheyo. And then, as Orisha Oko began to dress himself with the leaves that he saw in the forest, there Yemoja, goddess of the river of the sweet waters, saw Orisha Oko. And when Orisha Oko and Yemaya saw each other, it was an instant love. Orisha Oko gun were were, mawi 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 mariwo. Aheyo. Orisha Oko went, my lady, you are one that is so beautiful, and I have come from Ogbashe at the request of Olodumare to come and join with you to teach the people how to cultivate the land. And Yemoja looked at Orisha Oko and said, it would be my pleasure to be with you to cultivate the land. And it is said that's exactly what they did. They began to cultivate as man and woman all of the land. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. And it is said that Orishoko began to give the secrets to Yemoja. And Yemoja began to use her sweet waters to plant all of those secrets of seeds. And then Orishoko began to bring the people together. And Yemoja began to call the people together. And they began to harvest the land. Orishoko would sing and the animals would come. And the animals would begin to listen to all that Orishoko had to say about how to plow the land, how to take the seeds. And then Orishoko called on the villages and began to say, if you wish to live in balance with the Lodumare and source, if you wish to live with the fresh waters of life, it is essential that you care for the land, that you attend to the land, that you nurture the land, that you never take too much or too little, that you understand how Shango, the fire, how Yoya, the wind, move the land to nurture the land. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Ha hey yo, ha hey yo. And so Orisha oko today still comes and speaks to us in the ways of our people, in the tradition of the Yoruba and the sacred laws of Ifa. And Orisha Oko says to all of us here as humans that we must learn to take care of the sweet waters of life, that we must learn to nurture and cultivate the seeds. We must not take too much. We must know how to bring the balance so that the people can live. Let us pay attention to all that is happening in our land today. For if we do not, even the Orishas will leave the earth and humanity will no longer be. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Ha hey yo. I'd like all of you to join me by saying, ah hey yo, Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Ah hey yo, Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Orisha oko gun were were, mawi mariwo. Ha hey yo. Modupwene beleselo dumare. I have spoken in accordance to the laws of Ifa of a Jiogben Odi. May we learn to take care of the land so that the people may live. Thank you.
I'd like to invite all of our tellers to come back up for another round of applause from our listeners, please. Come on up, faculty. The splendid faculty of the South Mountain Community College Storytelling Institute. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you at another class, at another event. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Travel safe. Good night.